Hello, everybody, and welcome to Persistence Playbook. On today's show, we've got a great guest. He's the founder of Team Hyder, and that is a business enterprise focused on helping entrepreneurs drive growth. He's the EVP for RIC Financial. He's launched over 150 insurance agencies, generated $100 million in just over 5 years. That's a lot. He's a thought leader in the entrepreneurship space. He's been featured on CBS, NBC, Fox, and the New York Times. He's also the host of the Hit Streak podcast. He's the voice of Sirius XM's Y'all Alternative radio station. Woo, that's a mouthful. Nick Hyder, thank you for being on the show, my man.
Man, you crushed it, baby. I need to get you to introduce me every time I go do something, you know?
You got a lot going on there. Let me tell you, that is one of the more in-depth intros that I think I've ever had to handle there. I mean, boy, talk about a guy that is fitting as much into his day as possible. And we'll kind of get into how you do all those things and wear all those hats. And you're wearing a really cool hat right now, by the way. I love the paperboy look, man.
Appreciate it, brother. It's one of my favorites. It's to go to.
100%. I've got one of those too. It's always a big hit. And, I kind of want to jump right in. And I've heard you say that, the two most powerful words in the human language are I am. And I want you to just kind of talk on that a little bit.
Yeah, man, it was, I can't take full credit for that. I can't remember who I heard that from, but, a man's life are what his thoughts make of it. And, what you say to yourself, that voice in your head is so powerful. I learned that as an athlete. That's the confidence is a skill, and you have to feed your confidence. And one of the ways that you do that is with the own voice in your own mind, right? So in my town, how are you doing is the most popular greeting that you hear on a regular basis, right? So
sure,
I was saying I'm good, and I said that millions of times, and that's all that I was. And that's not what I'm called to be. So every time somebody greets me, I have an opportunity to grow and to continue to convince myself, what I truly am, which is I am unstoppable. You know what I mean? And it's crazy. It does two things. One, everybody remembers it. Okay? In a room full of people, if you ask 100 people how you doing, I'm the one guy they remember because of my response. And then two, I've said it so many times that I actually believe it.
I love that. So when you ask Nick, how you doing? You're not going to get fine or good, doing okay. You're going to get, I am unstoppable. And yeah, I think that's correct. People will certainly remember that. And in a way, every time that you get to say that, it's just programming your subconscious to believe it,
Absolutely.
right? And it really is an opportunity to say it to somebody else, which I think is just it's more powerful than saying an affirmation by yourself, like in your room or on a walk. I think affirmations on your own can be powerful, but if you can involve another human, I just think there's more vibration there. And I think it is going to program your subconscious on a much more powerful level.
No doubt. I mean, look, the difference between a good day and a bad day is what you think of it, period. You know what I mean? So if you had a good day, you get to decide what day you had, good or bad, So, and again, it goes back to controlling those thoughts, man. Like, how can you win the war against the world if you can't win the war in your own mind? You know what I mean?
I totally agree. And I guess I'm just kind of curious, do you ever deal with some negative self-talk that just kind of comes up out of nowhere? And if you do, how do you kind of combat that and work through that?
Yeah. I'll be honest with you. Yesterday, I got my butt kicked all up and down this town. Yesterday, when you're doing new things and you're doing great things and you're walking into uncharted territories, when you go into a fight, you're going to get hit. You know what I mean? So it's going back to that one of my favorite quotes in the Rocky franchise movies. It's not how hard you can hit; it's how many hits you can take and still keep moving forward. Right? So yesterday was rough, and I've taught myself when I'm going through those days where, it's hard, man. It's hard that I catch myself looking up and telling the Lord, hey, man, I'm listening. What's this for? Help me get there, right? I'm going to keep pushing forward as a man of faith. That's something that I got to do. But, it's not always easy. And yesterday I surrounded myself with some people that helped me instill confidence and helped me continue to raise myself, to raise my own self-thoughts and everything else. They make me better. People that iron sharpens iron. So I surrounded myself with iron yesterday to push through those challenges. But again, man, like the the gifts are on the other side of those challenges. So like you got to be grateful for those challenges when you go through them in those tough times, because when you figure out how to get to the other side of those, you're a bigger, better, stronger person. You can do more. You've raised your capacity. You're a better version. And anytime you level up, then usually, like I don't know, financial reward follows that. Audience growth follows that. Like everything follows that. Your businesses grow. Everybody around you grows. So yesterday was a tough one, and I went to bed grateful. And then I woke up excited because I'm like, well, that day's over, so this one's got to be good.
That's
Perspective.
true. Okay. Yeah, it can't get any more challenging. I hear you, but I love how you kind of lean on your faith in those moments, right? You look up towards the big guy and you say, I'm listening, and I think that is kind of like a powerful mindset shift for anyone that does have a powerful faith. Is to look for God's answers that are out there. Look for His word. He is speaking to you in many different ways, and He's speaking to you just as much through the failures as He is the successes, maybe even a little bit more so. So I think that's a powerful mindset shift. And I'm just curious, how important has your faith been overall, and you being able to do all the things that you've done to this point in life?
The faith is the foundation from which everything else is built upon, right? So when my faith was fractured, it was weaker, and so was I. So was my output. So was my impact on others. So was my ability to be a great husband and even a great father. So, um, I go back to what they tell you when you're on an airplane. If something happens, oxygen mask will drop down, and you can't save anybody passed out on the floor. You have to be of certain health to help others. And for me, feeding my faith is how I grow myself. That is how I help myself, and that it enables me to help others through that. Right. So again, that's the center of my universe, man.
I love that, and I think it's a topic that a lot of really successful entrepreneurs don't necessarily feel comfortable going deep on. On my podcast, I probably only really talked faith, a few times with yourself now. Stephen Scoggins, another guest that I had an in-depth conversation about faith, and I think just for a lot of people, it's such an in-depth, crucial point that it needs to be touched on. It can't be swept aside because it really is the main pillar for so many hugely impactful entrepreneurs out there. And before we move on to other matters, I'm just curious, like, what does that look like in your daily practice? Are you getting up and reading the Bible? Do you just kind of have a few moments of prayer and conversation with God? Like, what does it actually look like in practice for you?
So for me, the Sunday church service is where I go to refill the tank. Okay, because I'm going to burn every ounce of fuel Monday through Saturday. You got me. So
For
when
sure.
we go back Sunday, that's a day to refuel. But my son has a crazy ball schedule with travel and everything else, but we always tune in. The family and I always catch the sermon, even if it's online. And the most important part about that is that as soon as we're done, we all stop and we look at each other. And I ask my son, "Hey, what'd you get out of that? What'd you get out of that sermon?" I ask my wife the same question. And my daughter is too young to listen to those just yet. But like again, it's what did you get out of that, and how are you going to apply it to your life this week? Because again, you go there. There's a man standing on stage called a pastor that God has called to speak through, right? So it's my job to figure out when we're listening to this, what is God saying to just me, right? So I got to make myself the only person in the room. He's speaking only to me. That's the challenge. And it's funny because I have a great relationship with my pastors and whatnot. And when the senior pastor preaches, everybody's there. But if it's one of his off days and the associate pastors might be coming out, you notice the attendance tends to decline a little bit. You
Sure,
know what I
sure.
mean? And so, like,
Oh,
those
100%.
might be the hardest days to hear what God's trying to say to you. But again, if there's intent behind it, if that's your purpose when you go there, because some days I don't feel like sitting there just like everybody else. There's stuff on my mind,
Sure.
everything else. But it's like, all right, dude, it's 30 to 45 minutes, right? And literally, like, I can channel everything, and like, so you can always get something out of something if there's purpose there and intent, and that's what you're there to do. So you know
Yeah,
what I
I
mean.
like that.
But again, it's to refuel because I'm going all out for the next 6 days. I'm giving it all I got, leaving nothing in the tank.
100%. There's no way to be doing everything that you're doing without going all out and leaving it all on the ball field, for 6 days a week. But I think that's a powerful kind of frame to look at faith and look at church from, and be like, there's part of this message that God is speaking directly to me. Because I think sometimes it's easy just to sit there in the pews and think this is kind of like a generic message to everyone and maybe not applies so much to me in my life. But if you really think of it that way, that God is speaking directly to me, you can definitely find something in that message every single Sunday that speaks directly to you and your situation and your journey. I think that's a really powerful mindset shift to kind of take into your Sunday worship. And, we touched on a little bit, I am unstoppable. I know that's kind of like your main mantra that you lean on in tough times. I'm just curious, are there any other like affirmations or internal mantras that you see yourself saying internally, maybe externally, when you hit that level of resistance, a little bit of a feeling of laziness in your day where you don't want to do what you know you should do? Are there any other mantras or affirmations that you lean on in those tough times?
No, I just catch myself, like, instead of asking myself or telling myself that it's something that I can't do, I ask myself how. So, growing up in a great happy middle class family, there were certain things that I was always told, we can't afford that. But if you change that word "can't" and replace it with "how," it changes things, because now all of a sudden you're looking for a way to get it. And, like, I owe so much to my parents, and honestly, the reason I'm able to do as much as I can today is because I'm surrounded by unbelievably great people who make it all possible. I couldn't do it without them. And but my parents instilled a level of determination and just kind of fight, where even if you beat me, it's going to take you all day long, So usually the last man standing, for better or worse, I'll be the last one standing. And that just goes a long way, especially with the world that we live in today. I feel like that goes further than it did 20 years ago, even. I feel like people are quickest to quit. And I hate quitters. I don't hate much in this life, but I hate a quitter. But I love a finisher. And a quitter and a finisher, they look a lot alike. You know what I mean? So I didn't quit playing baseball. I finished. You know what I'm saying? So even though I didn't get where I wanted to go, I was finished. That was the end of my road. That was the end of my journey on my own terms. So quitters and finishers look a lot alike, but like God hides the gift when you finish something in the end. He hides the beginning of something else in the end of something, right? So if you quit, you don't
Totally
get those
agree.
gifts. You have to finish.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that like really can speak to a lot of, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, or even wannapreneurs, right? People that have kind of like maybe started and not finished projects. They're working on this online course, but they never actually launch it. And the truth is just the action of creating a product, launching it, bringing it to market is going to teach you so much more than sitting there and brainstorming with a pen and pencil or thinking about what opportunity is the right one for me. Whatever opportunity is in front of you that you think looks like a decent one, go with that, launch it, finish it. And at the end of that will be so much more learning. You'll know where to go from there.
Yeah.
Take the action. The action will give you the clarity that you seek in this world, as opposed to just sitting there and trying to figure out, oh God, what direction should I do? One line that I've heard from you that I like a lot, actually, and I'm not sure if it's an original or if you heard this from someone else, but I've heard you say confidence is the memory of success. And I think
I believe that's
that's
the actual
powerful.
definition of confidence.
Is that if I see, I've never even looked up confidence. Is that what I get if I go in the Merriam-Webster's? I get
We got
that.
to look up words more often. How many times have you heard, like, you need to be humble, right? Well, if you look up the definition of humble, it means you don't think much of yourself, right? So
Right.
the word humble is used in the Bible. Be humble unto the Lord, not to other men.
Right.
You
Right.
got me? So you're humble unto the Lord, but you don't want to be humble to other people because it means you don't think much of yourself. You have low thoughts of yourself, right? So going
So true.
going back to, we can't afford that. How many times in life do you catch yourself telling yourself all the things you can't do? Well, stop focusing on what you can't do and focus on what you can do. Spend all your brain power, your mind, your energy on what you can do and grow those things. Because everything that you can't do here, dude, like, those are limitations. People fight for those limitations daily. They don't even realize they're doing it. Dude, nothing I say is original. I don't think anything anybody says is original anymore. I think it's all been said or done at least once, right? My
Sure.
buddy Hunter Bledsoe says, Nick, life's fair. Everybody's price is just different. I say that all the time. It's going to be title of a book I write. I'm going to give him credit for it, you know. But
That's a good one.
eternal life is also fair, but eternal life's fair. Everybody's price is just different. Eternal life is fair. Everybody's price is the same.
There you go. There you go. And I love that about the word humble. That word humble completely drives me crazy, especially when athletes use it, right? Like I think they were asking LeBron James about how he felt about being the top scorer all time this year. And he said, "Oh, it's very humbling." I'm like, no, it's not. There's nothing humbling about being the top scorer of all time. Maybe getting swept by Denver. That was humbling. not being the leading scorer. And athletes use that term humbling all the time. I'm like, that's the worst use of humbling you could possibly do. But I'll have to look up confidence, because I think that is honestly, that is the perfect definition. It's the memory of success. It really is.
It totally is. And, you know, again, and confidence is a skill. You've got to practice it, right? Confidence. Let's see here. The belief.
He's looking it up. We're looking it up right now, baby.
The feeling or belief that one can rely on someone or something, firm trust. That's the noun. The state of feeling certain about the truth of something, a feeling of self-assurance arising from appreciation of one's own abilities and abilities. So yeah, it's the memory of success. That's what confidence is.
I love it. And I think that's totally true. And I think we can all do a better job of reminding ourselves of instances in our past where we really did well. You know, maybe it was a really quality speaking engagement that we had. Maybe we killed the speech at our best friend's wedding, 5 years ago. Remind yourself of those things before your next speaking engagement, or remind yourselves of the time that you gave that great sales pitch in the past when you're about to walk into a sales pitch. Mm-hmm. Or if you're stepping up on the first tee, remind yourself of that time that you bombed one right down the fairway. Actually remind yourself of your successes, and that is how we're going to build confidence. And I know you talk a lot about practicing confidence. So how do we practice confidence? Is it just about remembering the good things that we've done, or is there a little bit more to it?
It goes back to what you think about, man. Are you thinking about all the things that you failed at? Are you thinking about all the things that, Derek Jeter said that success is so important because you can always draw from it, right? So anytime you're in a situation, whatever it may be, especially the older you get, it's not the first time you've gone through something very similar to that, if not the exact same thing. So how did you overcome it in the past? Or what knowledge did you learn from the previous failure? And then you can use that to grow. So, dude, we've all won. Nobody's undefeated, first of all, okay, in anything. But we've all won. We've had many victories, okay? All of us have unique gifts that make us one of one. So when it comes to confidence, you just got to be aware of what you're saying to yourself, and do you actually believe that you can accomplish what it is that you're up against? Again, yesterday, I'm getting my butt kicked, dude. We're doing some things we've never done before. We're running into some roadblocks I've never seen before, and yesterday was a challenge where I'm like, I'm looking at my wife and I'm like, I was under the weather a little bit yesterday. There's all these things that contribute, but it all came down to me like, all right, well, the longer the day went on, it just came down to, I got to get this done. There's people relying on me. It is what it is. Let's go. It was a decision.
I love it.
It was a decision, so, and we figured it out. And now we're better, bigger, and stronger.
That's it, man. That is it. And really, anytime that you're trying to grow or do new things in your business or your life, there's going to be roadblocks. You just got to expect them. And there's going to be days where you get your butt kicked. But if you get back up, you keep moving forward and keep taking action. That's the most important thing. Just keep taking action. Even if you're not sure what step to take, just take a step. And you'll learn a lot more from that step than you will, really reading any book or watching any online course. And believe me, I'm a big proponent of lifelong learning. But the truth is, just taking consistent action is going to teach you so much more than reading any book, watching any course, or subscribing to any coach. At least in my viewpoint, I think it will.
Yes, sir.
So listen, you're a guy who is doing a lot of things, pro athlete. He's setting records in the insurance industry. He's got a podcast. He's a keynote speaker that's very on demand. The list goes on and on. You're thriving in a lot of different areas of life, not to mention you're a great father and husband. What does your goal setting strategy and technique look like? Like, are you setting goals on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, a quarterly basis? Like, break that down for me, exactly how you're setting and knocking out these goals the way you are.
So Marcus Whitney is a buddy of mine. He's one of the owners of the National Major League Soccer Club here, and has changed the game of venture capitalism and healthcare, and especially in tech. And he taught me years ago. He said, "Dude, you got to take time to manage your time." I was like, "All right, what does that mean?" He said, "Dude, seriously, my wife and I sit down once a quarter with a bottle of wine at a restaurant and some laptops, undistracted, and we sit down and we plan all the things that we got to do the next quarter, all the way down to like having dinner with parents. Okay, and we get all those things on a calendar based on the goal and the steps that we need taken, and then all the time that's left is for all the things that you can't see that's going to be needed along the way." So I really took something like that, and my wife and I started to adopt that. But we started looking at even bigger. Like, I'm 43 years old as I sit here today. So, where do we want to be? My kids are 14 and 3. We want to be able to chase them around, chase grandkids, follow them around, and do all those things when we get a little bit older. I don't necessarily want to work like I work forever. So we start big. Like, what's the end goal? When I'm done here on this earth, what do I want to be remembered for? What do I want to leave for the next generations? It's specifically my family's next generations, because every generation has to get better. Okay, so we start big. Like, who are we becoming? What's the end goal? And then we work our way backwards. So it's a lot like the GPS that you use every single day when you get on the road. It only works if you tell it where you're going, the final destination. But that final destination has to be precise. It can't just be a city. It won't work. It's got to be a specific destination. And then it's going to tell you all this stuff. Like, here's multiple routes you can take to get there and how long it's going to take. And then when life happens and a tree falls in the road or a wreck or construction, it'll say, hey, there's other routes that you can take, and this is the new time that it's going to take to get there. So we structure everything the same way that you structure how to get to the next place you're going in the GPS in your phone. And then we work our way backwards from there. So who Nick Hyder is going to become, which that changes, it evolves. That's the other thing too, is it does evolve as new things happen. But then that dials down to annual goals, to quarterly goals, to monthly, weekly, all the way down to today. There were specific things that I got to get done today to keep moving the ball down the field towards the end zone.
I love it. Take the time to manage your time. I like that a lot. And I think that is a really important process, is to get the laptop out every quarter and map out the things that you need to do. Leave some white space in that calendar, because there's certainly going to be a lot of things that pop up that you don't know you got to do right now. That's something I've been doing with a friend of mine for many years. He's a successful entrepreneur, and we get together at a restaurant once a quarter and we just map out, what are we trying to do this quarter? And then we hold each other accountable to those big objectives. And just that one little practice, I think, can make a huge impact on anyone's life. Is just get together with someone you respect, set some goals for that quarter, hold each other accountable. That right there, for me at least, has been invaluable as far as moving the ball forward on projects that are important to myself. You're obviously a guy who has a lot of
everything you do has a finish, right? Everything you do, you're going to finish it. So, like, even when you start a business, I believe you should start the business with building the business with the exit and working your way back. Is this business something you're going to retire from, pass down? What happens when you're done with it? I think you need to start with that and work your way backwards, because if not, you get hung up in the rat race, on the hamster wheel, and the end isn't in sight, right? So I don't think I wouldn't have finished school if they didn't break it into 13 grades, kindergarten through 12. If I'd have been going there 4, 5, 6 years, and I'm like, dude, when does this end? I wouldn't have finished. You know what I mean? Really, when you're in 10th grade and you're like, dude, only 3 more years of this, baby. We're so close. You know what I mean? So even school's broken up into chapters.
100%. And I love that GPS analogy, right? Because you got to know exactly where you're going. If you're being vague and you're saying, I'm just going to that county, then you're not really going to know what roads to take to get there. But if you know exactly what intersection you're going for, then you can actually map out a detailed path towards that target. I love that analogy. I've never heard that one before. I know it's not an original because nothing's an original, but I'm going to give you credit for it because I never heard it before.
I appreciate it. I'll take it.
So let's give it to him. Let's give it to him. So I want to talk a little bit about personal brand. It's obviously a topic that you're really passionate about. You built a huge following on Instagram. Your videos get tons of engagement. And I'm just kind of curious, what does your content process and strategy look like right now? Like, are you writing down ideas for content? Do you just have someone following you around with a camera? Like, what's your process look like? How have you been able to build the 43,000 followers on Instagram the way that you have?
Well, yes and yes. So there's a camera rolling a lot, and we're always trying to find new ways to roll more because some of the best things that you can capture is in the moment, when you're just being you, doing what it is that you do great. So I'm real. It's called captivating content, right? So I think capturing captive content helps do that because it's a part of the root of the word. You know what I mean? Um, but past that, there's a lot of planning. There's goals, just like anything else. What is it that we want to do? What messages do we want to send? One of the little tricks that we do a lot of is we film the calls to actions first, so that every clip that's made is rooted towards a call to action. Towards, if somebody likes what they hear, what do they do with it? Because ultimately that's what we're
Sure.
here to do, is to help people. That's the whole reason that we do it. So when you start with what call to action are you going to use, meaning is that like DM this for this, or send us a message, or subscribe for more, or listen to the episode, or whatever it may be. What's the clip about? And then you've got to tell somebody if they like it and they want more, here's where you get it. And I think I probably ran 3,000 pieces of social media content online without a call to action for a long time. You know,
Sure, sure.
and the
We all
moment that we
have.
started doing it, we put those in place. It changed. It changed everything because it gave people something to do when they liked what they heard. So so it just gave everything more of like a preciseness.
For sure. And what calls to action are you focused on right now? Are you just telling people to follow the Instagram page? Are you directing them towards an email newsletter sign up landing page? Like, what is the call to action that you're utilizing these
There's
days?
usually 5 to 6 at a time, and they change. So like it might be, to book me for a keynote. Tune in,
Mm-hmm.
like we're with the Stagecoach Festival out in California. The station that I'm the voice of for Sirius XM. A lot of those artists were headliners in that festival. So I got to do a bunch of cool promo for that. So we were driving a lot of traffic to that station. So that was one of the calls to actions. Tuning into the podcast, listening to an episode, that's always one every single week because the new episode comes out every Tuesday. DM us this word, or to inquire within to become a new client, whether it be you need help with insurance, you want a quote, are you looking to create more content, hire our agency, or any of the other businesses that we have. So literally every organization or entity I'm involved in, there's 3 to 5 calls to actions that we can utilize.
Sure. I love that. And I think that's something that a lot of creators don't think of. What is the point of this content? What are we trying to inspire as far as action at the end of this piece of content? We're not just making content for the followers and the likes, because the followers and the likes aren't really putting any money in your bank account unless, you're crazy and you've got a ridiculous following. And then of course, you'll make some passive revenue just from the platform itself. But for the most part, for most of us, we're really trying to drive people, towards a newsletter sign up list, towards a product, towards an event. And it's important to ask yourself that question before you make the content. What is the end goal here? Because if you don't have an end goal, then it's really not your best use of time. You could be making phone calls direct to consumer and probably doing more deals that way, as opposed to creating content. Know what you're doing with your content. Know what the goal is. I think that is awesome advice. And you talked a little bit about your keynote speaking there for a second. I want to talk on that because you're now a very in-demand keynote speaker. You're talking on big stages. And I'm curious, what did that journey look like for you? Because there's a lot of aspiring speakers out there. They don't know where to get started. And I'm kind of curious just what your speaking journey has looked like.
Well, I met the real Brad Lee in 2020. And at that
Mhm.
time, we were killing it in the insurance space only with static images. And the day I met him, he looked at my Instagram and he said, "You're not using video." And I said, "Nope, we're doing really well with just pictures." And he said, "Well, how good would you be doing with video?" And I thought, well, I think at the time I had like, maybe 5 or 6 thousand followers across all platforms and whatnot.
Sure.
And he asked that question. I thought, that's a great question. So I started doing video, and we got it up, and it was well produced, and that impressed him. So he invited me on his podcast, and I went on that podcast, and I learned a lot about podcasts that day. I learned that I didn't understand them and value them the way that they should be understood and valued. And then the episode came out, and I went from like 4,000 followers to like 10,000 followers almost overnight. So I was like, man, that's powerful. And all the clips that came from it, and how it kept running, and how those things still get watched every single day. So um, when it comes to keynote speaking, Brad always said, Hyder, money's abundant. It's abundant. You know where it is? And I'll be like, no, where? He said, it's in everybody else's pockets. You just got to give them a good or a service to get them to give you something, trade whatever it is that you do for that. And then he said, Brad gets a very hefty keynote fee for his stuff. And mine right now, I don't know when this episode is going to come out. This may be dated, but right now, 10 grand is the asking price. And he said, you know why you get 10 and I get whatever he gets? He said, because I asked for the amount that I get. So, one, to be in demand to do those things, you got to have a certain amount of influence. You have to have made a certain amount of impact. And I heard a speaker named Brooke. She defined impact as when you take your God-given talent, your God-given abilities, and you apply them into the marketplace. That's when you make an impact. So you have to make an impact in the marketplace to be a draw for a keynote speaker, and you have to have a certain track record of success so that people will believe what it is that you're saying. Okay. And then if that's something that you actually want to do, people aren't just thinking, hey man, I think Nick should be a keynote speaker. Let me just ask him if he wants to do one. You have to tell people you do it. You have to promote that it's out. You have to put it out there. And you have to go out there and say, hey man, if you got any opportunities, I'd love to do it. And Marcus Whitney, who I'll refer to again, he told me the same thing. He said, how to go out and do free until you no longer have to do them for free. And I did a lot of freebies.
Hell yeah.
But I was always asking for the money the whole way along the way until I finally
Sure.
got it. Right. And then once you get it, you can ask for it again and again and again. And that becomes the norm.
I love that. Give me an idea. Just what were some of these freebies? What were some of these small stages that you started with? Are we talking like local rotaries and like sports teams, things of that nature?
Anything and everything. Some of my buddies that would host events of their own and whatnot, I'd say, hey, I'd love to put some value into your guys. I'll show up for free to do it. And they're always like, hey, that'd be great. But yeah, I did anything and everything. Chambers, rotaries. I love going out and speaking to sales leaders, to their teams on ways that they can drive up their own businesses and whatnot. Just like in the insurance space, we had a lot of agents, and we always brought people in to add value to those agents. But it's Coach Burt taught me that if you get full speaker fee, you go up and you deliver for that audience. If you get a portion of your speaker fee, well, you're gonna a portion of your keynote's going to be selling from the stage, and if you're doing it for free, you're selling. You're giving some value and you're making offers. So when going out and working with mortgage, real estate, insurance people, helping out those sales leaders that have all those people underneath them that are looking to grow their businesses and whatnot, I can go out there and pour some value, especially about personal branding and digital marketing, and then offer the agency services at the Hit Lab or through what we do at the Greatness Factory. So we can go out and we can talk about those things. We can educate them, and we can say, now, when you're ready to take action, here's where you go and who you do it with. Let's go.
I love it. Let me put some value into them. I like that a lot. And I think that's a good way of putting it, right? If you're getting full fee, you're just up there speaking. If you're partial fee, you're selling a little bit. And if you're speaking for free, then you're up there selling a lot. And I think that's a pretty good way of looking at things. And so many aspiring speakers, I think, just kind of get caught, in paralysis because they want to get paid up front and at the beginning. And that's just not how it works, right? You got to get the reps in and just find people to speak in front of. And the more you do it, the better you're going to get. And eventually people are going to start paying you for it. But you got to start getting up on stage anyway, anyhow, and getting those reps in at the beginning.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you did. And, built yourself up to this point right now, right? Where you're getting 10K per speech. And I'm sure that'll be even more 5 years from now, but it's all about getting started. It's all about getting the reps in. And you spoke a little bit there about digital marketing and something that you do speak on in these keynotes. For a small business owner right now, let's say it could be real estate, could be insurance, could be any number of things. Do you think every small business owner should be running some sort of digital paid ad right now online? Is that something everyone should be doing?
Yeah. I put it to you this way. I would challenge just about anybody to think of anybody that they know that doesn't have a smartphone and that doesn't spend time scrolling on it. Can you find anybody? And if the answer is no, then why wouldn't you want your business on there? All right, you got to go where people are. As a man of faith, that's what Jesus said. Go to where people are and bring them back. Right. So here's where people are at. And it is my opinion that when people are spending 6, 8, 10, 12 hours a day staring at a device, when they see your competitors, you will lose your clients to your competitors or whoever they see on this sucker if they don't see you. Right? So this is where everybody's at. We are day trading attention, baby. You know what I mean? So again, I can't buy from a business if I don't know they're there.
Very true.
Okay? And usually if I buy from a business, it's the one that I maybe heard from the most or most recent. All right? So my family, we eat pretty clean at my house, But dude, like, one of my favorite things is like, I love the Pizza Hut stuffed crust pizza. It tears me up. Like, I'm miserable for days after. All right. Twice a year. But dude, like, when I see that commercial, I always look at my son and I'm like, dude, next time, that's the one we're getting. You know what I mean? But if I don't keep seeing that commercial, I might forget. But every time I see it, I'm reminded next time when it's time to do it, that's the one that we're going to get. If not, I might see another competitor's pizza commercial. I'll be like, that might be the one I want. But if I keep seeing that one, I've made that decision. Now I just need I need that affirmation over and over and over again. So again, it's all about consistency. There's so much noise out there. Out of all the noise that there is, how much of that are you remembered from that noise? I kind of live by the thing about, like, I don't take meetings, I set meetings. Okay, that was a mindset shift for me. And I'm always challenging my team. I'm always telling my team, like, guys, all the people that you strive to want to be like around, how many of those people, when they look at their calendar, does your name appear? You got to get on people's calendars. You got to get in the room with the people that are doing what you want to do. And that was why I started the podcast, so that I could do that. That was the sole purpose of the podcast when I first started, was to position myself as a person of authority in whatever it is that we're talking about. It was an unbelievable source of content, which I needed at the time. Okay. But it also gave me a reason to call people and say, hey man, I need to hang out with you for an hour. And I had no other reason to get them to say yes until I said, I've got a podcast. Right. And now we're associated with these great people forever. And the podcast has been the sharpest and most powerful tool in my tool belt for the last 5 years. Well, 4 years.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, podcasting is a pretty unbelievable way to get just face-to-face, voice-to-voice with really impressive people that maybe you wouldn't have had an easy in with otherwise, right? I mean, if you can get someone on your podcast, you're hanging out with them for 30, 40, 50 minutes, and yes, it's going to become content. It's going to get out there in the universe. It's going to give, both you and I, so some great exposure. But also, I just realized I learn so much from my guests. Like, every guest I have on, I'm learning one or two tactical things that I can immediately install in my business, in my life, that I wouldn't have learned otherwise. And then the people that you have on your podcast, you stay in touch with them. They honestly become your friends. Like, all of my guests I keep in touch with. I'm shooting them a text. I'm adding value to their lives. They're adding value to mine. It is an unbelievable tool. that I really think that almost every small business owner should almost consider. If you enjoy the art of conversation, you enjoy interviewing people, you enjoy asking interesting questions and then sitting back and listening, then I think you probably should start a podcast, and maybe even not to become the best podcast in the world, but just to have some great conversations with some great people and make some great connections. It is an unbelievable tool. And I want to kind of touch on one more thing kind of but before we wrap up here. And I've heard you talk about just the importance of discomfort. And it's something we can all agree on, right? You got to put yourself in uncomfortable situations on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, to make sure that you're always growing. And I'm just curious, what's that look like for you? Like, are you really like looking at life from a perspective, a lens of what situation is going to make me the least comfortable, and that's the one I got to go to? How do we kind of implement this in our lives, the importance of discomfort?
Well, first of all, change is inevitable, but growth is optional in that change. Okay. So when it comes to comfort, comfort is a reference. It's different for everybody. All right. Just like weight, what's heavy to you may or may not be heavy to me, but it's the heaviest thing you've ever lifted. So if you lift something heavier, what was heavy now all of a sudden is light or lighter, right? So comfort's 100% a reference. So, and you can't, they're called growing pains. They always hurt a little bit. You know what I mean? So if you're comfortable, are you growing? I haven't really,
Probably not.
I haven't found a lot of times where that's the case. You know what I mean? I'm comfortable in my relationship with my wife, but again, we're always challenging ourselves to do new things together. So like, there's comfort in that, but again, comfort's a reference, right? It is 100% a reference. So whatever it is that is maybe your breaking point today, if you can push that out a little bit further, you increased your capacity, you raised what you can take. Again, going back to, it's not how hard you can hit, it's how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward, keep getting up, right? So
I love
for
it.
me, I don't know how you could, like, working out. I love it, but it hurts. I'm 43. I've got some old injuries that hold me back. Right, hey, working out physically sucks. Yet I love it. The reason I think that I love it is because I'm putting myself into the fire and in pain, and like that's like usually my first win of the day. You know,
For
like I
sure.
did something that I didn't want to do, and I found a way to enjoy it, to crave it even, and then use that as a way to drive me out. Like I already got my first victory of the day, dude, and I'm ready to rock and roll. So I think for me, what makes the difference between a good day and a bad day is how many wins I can rack up. And win can be big or small. You know, my day might be to just drink one of these little suckers right here, right? So that's easy. I can do it right now while you're watching me. I just won, you know? So I love racking up those wins because I'm all about momentum. I'm all
For
about
sure.
momentum, you know? So, and that's why even if you don't feel like working out with weights or you don't have time, sometimes that happens with travel or anything else, dude, you still got to do something, whatever it is that you could do so that you kept it moving forward. Because like that one day, an alcoholic that's recovered would tell you this: if they fall off the wagon, it's harder to, like, they'll stay off just because it's like, well, you know, I did it. It was one day. What's good? Two going to hurt. Two turns into three and three turns into six versus just getting right back on it and trying to put those streaks together. It's all momentum, dude. You got to have momentum going in the right direction. And again, if you're comfortable, I think if you're comfortable, are you where God wants you to be? Is the question I'd ask you.
I love it. And I think that is just really good advice, is just put those days together, put those streaks together, whatever important projects you're working on in your life. Maybe it's fitness, put that streak together, at least do 100 push-ups today. If you can't make it to the gym, but do
Yeah.
something. If you're trying to build an online course, record one module. If you're trying to scale your podcast, reach out to one possible guest, do something, get something on paper today. It might not be an A+ day, but at least you push the ball forward a little bit in that area of your life. And that's how you do great things, by stacking those little wins. I think that is so true, my man. Nick, thank you for being with us today, dude. This was fire. You really brought a lot of value to the audience. But where can everyone keep up with what you got going on? You got a lot going on.
Yes, sir. Oh, man. The easiest place is just nickhyder.com. You can find anything and everything right there. All of my social media is at Nick Hyder. You know, Instagram seems to be everybody's favorite right now. I would encourage everybody. We've got a YouTube channel we've been putting a lot of work on. We've gone through the gauntlet of the pains of having things removed and blacklisted and all that kind of stuff. Just because big stuff ain't necessarily something YouTube loves, But we're working on building that. I appreciate everybody going on and subscribing and keeping up with us there as well. But everything's at Nick Hyder, nickhyder.com. It's easy for you, baby.
Thank you, brother. Everyone get out there, follow Nick. I know I did a deep dive into his content before this interview. It's really valuable stuff. You'll get a lot from it. Also, check out his podcast. And this has been Persistence Playbook, guys. Thank you for being with us. Quick reminder, there will be some resistance to the work you know you need to do this week. Acknowledge that resistance. Go out there and take action anyway. But we'll catch you next week, guys. Take care.